The conference room at the United Nations building had seen many important meetings, but nothing quite like this. Ambassador General Vexthor of the Zintharian hegemony stood at the entrance, his purple scales gleaming under the fluorescent lights. He was 7 feet tall with 4 arms and a crown of crystal spikes that glowed with neural energy. Behind him, 6 of his officers stood in perfect formation, their weapons visible and their faces stern. This was the moment. The moment when another primitive species would see the might of the hegemony and fall to their knees. Vexthor had done this 217 times before. It never got old. He stepped forward, activating his neural crown. The crystals pulsed with waves of pure fear. A telepathic broadcast that had made entire planetary councils wet themselves. The room should have filled with screams. People should have been running for the exits. Instead, a short woman in a business suit walked up to him smiling. Ambassador Vexthor, welcome to Earth. She extended her hand. I'm Sarah Chen. We're so excited to meet you. Can I get you some coffee, tea? We weren't sure what you'd like, so we prepared several options. Vexthor stared at her. The fear waves were still broadcasting. His crown was working perfectly. Why wasn't she afraid? He started, his translator struggling with confusion. I am Ambassador General Vexthor, Supreme Voice of the Zintharian hegemony, Conqueror of the Outer Rim, Bearer of— That's a lot of titles, Sarah interrupted cheerfully. You must have amazing business cards. Please sit down. We have so much to discuss. One of his officers leaned close. Sir, they don't seem to be responding to the crown. I can see that, Vexthor hissed. He turned off the neural crown and sat down, his 4 arms folding in what he hoped looked intimidating. Human, your world has been selected for integration into the hegemony. You will surrender your weapons, your government, and your resources. In return, we will allow you to exist. Sarah nodded, pulling out a tablet. Right, we got your initial message. Very impressive. Though I have to say, the special effects on that hologram you sent were a bit over the top, but we appreciate the effort. Special effects? Vexthor's translator made a confused chirping sound. The whole planet's exploding thing. Sarah waved her hand. Very dramatic. My team and I put together a response proposal. It's about 47 pages, but the key points are on page 3 if you want to skip ahead. She slid a thick document across the table. Vexthor stared at it like it was a live grenade. You made a document? Of course. We can't just agree to things without proper paperwork. This is the UN after all. We have procedures. Sarah smiled again. Now Section A covers trade agreements, Section B is about cultural exchange programs, and Section C, that's the fun one, talks about joint scientific research. We're particularly interested in your faster-than-light technology. Vexthor's left eye twitched. This wasn't how this worked. This was never how this worked. You misunderstand, he said slowly, standing up to his full height. This is not a negotiation. This is a declaration. You will submit or you will be destroyed. He pressed a button on his wrist device. The wall behind him shimmered and transformed into a massive holographic display. It showed the hegemony fleet, thousands of warships, each one capable of destroying a city. The display zoomed in on one ship firing its main weapon, obliterating an entire moon in a flash of blue light. The human delegation watched politely. When the display finished, one of the human generals raised his hand. Question. What's the reload time on that main cannon? Looks like it took about 30 seconds between the charge-up and the actual firing. That's not bad, but it leaves you vulnerable to counterattack. Another human, a young man with glasses, added, also, the CGI rendering on the explosion was inconsistent. The debris field expanded faster than the blast wave, which doesn't make physical sense unless you're accounting for— Enough! Vexthor roared. His officers stepped forward, hands on their weapons. Sarah held up her hand and the humans fell silent. Ambassador Vexthor, I understand you're used to a certain response, but we're not here to waste your time or ours. Earth is interested in joining the galactic community, but we need to discuss terms. Real terms. Not surrender or die terms. There are no other terms. Vexthor was breathing heavily now. Every species we have encountered has accepted this reality. Why are you different? Well, Sarah said thoughtfully, maybe because we've had a lot of practice not being intimidated. We've been intimidating each other for thousands of years. Nuclear weapons, biological warfare, climate change, asteroid impacts, artificial intelligence gone rogue. We've thought of every possible way we could die, And we're still here. She leaned forward. So when you show us pictures of exploding planets, we think, yeah, we've seen that movie. When you try to scare us with telepathy, we assume you have a headache. And when you demand immediate surrender, we pull out paperwork. Vexthor felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Uncertainty. This is your final warning, he said, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. Submit to the hegemony or face the consequences. Sarah stood up and extended her hand again. Tell you what, let's table the whole conquest thing for now. Why don't we have lunch? There's a great Indian restaurant 2 blocks from here. You can tell us about your empire. We'll tell you about Earth and maybe we can find some common ground. What? Lunch, Sarah repeated. You do eat, right? Vexthor looked at his officers. They looked back at him equally confused. In his 200 years of service across dozens of worlds, he had never, not once, been invited to lunch by a species he was trying to conquer. Suppose we do need to consume nutrients, he said weakly. Perfect. Sarah grabbed her jacket. Trust me, you're going to love the butter chicken. And we can talk about that treaty. 47 pages sounds like a lot, but it's really quite reasonable once you get into it. As the human delegation led the confused aliens out of the conference room, one of Vexthor's officers whispered, Sir, what just happened? Vexthor watched Sarah Chen chatting cheerfully with his second-in-command about something called non-bread. I have absolutely no idea, he admitted. 3 days had passed since the failed first contact, and Vexthor was getting desperate. The lunch had been good. The butter chicken was surprisingly excellent, but it had solved nothing. The humans still refused to show proper fear. High Command was sending increasingly angry messages demanding Earth's immediate surrender. Vexthor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominance, watching Earth spin slowly below. It was time for Plan B. Activate the display of force protocol, he ordered. His tactical officer nodded. Sir, we've selected an uninhabited asteroid near the human planet they call Mars. We will demonstrate our weapons at full power. The destruction will be visible from Earth. Good. Vexthor opened a communication channel. Attention, Earth, this is your final warning. We will now demonstrate the power of the hegemony. Watch in despair. On Earth, Sarah Chen received the message at her office. She sighed and picked up her phone. Get me NASA and CNN. The aliens want to blow up a rock. We're going to need cameras. 2 hours later, the International Space Station had been hastily converted into a viewing platform. A dozen human observers floated in the observation module, watching the massive hegemony dreadnought position itself near the asteroid. Someone had brought popcorn. Several people were live streaming. This is incredible, one scientist said, recording everything on his phone. The energy readings are off the charts. On Earth, millions of people tuned into the live broadcast. Social media exploded with commentary. Alien laser show is trending worldwide, one of the observers reported. Tell them to aim a bit to the left, another joked. The lighting's better. Aboard the Eternal Dominance, Vexthor watched the humans through his view screen. They were supposed to be terrified. Instead, they looked excited. Fire when ready, he said quietly. The dreadnought's main cannon charged with a deep hum that resonated through space. Energy gathered at the barrel, glowing brighter and brighter until it released in a devastating beam of pure destruction. The asteroid, roughly the size of a small mountain, simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, the next it was expanding vapor and debris. The humans on the ISS applauded. That was awesome. Someone shouted, Did you see the energy dispersion pattern? We need to analyze that. 7 out of 10 on the explosion scale. I've seen better in Michael Bay movies, but still pretty good. Vexthor felt his scales turning a darker shade of purple, which in his species indicated extreme frustration. They're rating it? He asked his crew. Apparently, sir, his tactical officer confirmed. The human social media platform Twitter is comparing it to something called a Death Star from their fictional entertainment. This is not entertainment. This is a demonstration of overwhelming force. Sir, his communications officer interrupted. We're receiving a transmission from Earth. Sarah Chen appeared on the screen, smiling as always. Very impressive, Ambassador. We'd like to invite you to a formal demonstration of human capabilities. Tomorrow, if you're available. Vexthor was about to refuse when his anthropologist, a small blue alien named Quilix, grabbed his arm. Say yes, Quilix whispered urgently. We need to understand these creatures better. They're not responding according to any psychological profile we have. Vexthor straightened his uniform. Very well. What are you going to show us? Oh, just a small demonstration at one of our military bases. Nothing fancy. See you tomorrow, Ambassador. The next morning, a human military transport picked up Vexthor and his security team. They landed at a place called Fort Bragg in North Carolina. Colonel James Rodriguez met them at the landing pad. Ambassador, welcome to Fort Bragg. Rodriguez shook Vexthor's hand with the same friendly casualness that all humans seem to possess. We've got a full tour planned. I think you'll find it educational. What followed was the strangest 3 hours of Vexthor's life. Rodriguez walked them through the base like he was showing off a hobby collection. These are our M1 Abrams tanks. We've got about 6,000 of them, give or take. Top speed of 45 miles per hour, can fire while moving. Extremely difficult to destroy. Over there are the Apache helicopters, named after indigenous warriors who used to fight in this region. Bit ironic, really. Vexthor watched human soldiers training with weapons, vehicles, and equipment. Everything looked primitive compared to hegemony technology. But there was something disturbing about the sheer quantity of it all. How many soldiers does Earth have? He asked. Active military? About 25 million, depending on which countries you count. Total population that could be mobilized in a real emergency? Rodriguez shrugged. Maybe 2 billion if we really needed them. 2 billion? Well, we've got about 8 billion people total. Not everyone can fight, obviously. Kids, elderly, people with medical conditions. But yeah, we've got numbers. They entered a briefing room where Rodriguez pulled up a presentation. Now this is the fun part. Let me tell you about nuclear weapons. For the next hour, Vexthor learned about humanity's history of splitting atoms to create devastating explosions. The numbers made his head hurt. You've built enough weapons to destroy your own planet 40 times over? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Well, we've disarmed a lot of them since the Cold War ended, Rodriguez said cheerfully. At peak, it was more like 80 times over. We realized that was probably overkill. You realized? Vexthor couldn't believe what he was hearing. You built enough weapons to destroy yourselves 80 times and then decided that was excessive? Yep. Mutually assured destruction is a hell of a deterrent. If everybody can kill everybody else, nobody wants to start anything. It's crazy, but it works. That evening, back aboard his ship, Vexthor sat in his quarters while Quilix showed him more information about Earth. Sir, you need to see these, Quilix said, pulling up human entertainment media. This is what they watch for fun. Vexthor watched clips from World War I, World War II, the Vietnam War, and dozens of other conflicts. Then Quilix showed him movies. Independence Day, where humans fought off an alien invasion. The Terminator, where they fought killer robots. The Walking Dead, where they fought zombies. Pacific Rim, where they built giant robots to fight giant monsters. Stop, Vexthor said quietly. Just stop. Sir, do you understand what we're seeing? They simulate their own destruction for entertainment, Vexthor said. They watch their own species die by the millions and they call it... What did that one say? Summer blockbuster? Yes, sir. Vexthor stood up and walked to his window, staring at Earth below. The planet looked so peaceful from here. Blue and green and white. Beautiful and absolutely terrifying. Quilix, he said slowly. I think we've made a terrible mistake. Quilix worked through the night, barely sleeping. As the hegemony's chief anthropologist, it was his job to understand species before they were conquered. Usually this took a few days. With humans, he was on week 2 and felt like he understood them less than when he started. He sat in his small office aboard the Eternal Dominance, surrounded by data screens showing everything he'd collected about Earth. The more he learned, the more worried he became. Computer, he said, begin recording. Threat assessment report. Species designation human. Revision 7. He took a deep breath and began. Initial assessment was incorrect. Humans are not a primitive species that can be easily intimidated. They are something much more dangerous. Evidence as follows. Quilix pulled up evolutionary data. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. Their method of hunting was to simply chase prey until it died of exhaustion. They didn't need to be fast. They just needed to never stop. This trait appears to extend to all aspects of their behavior. They do not give up. He switched to another file. Social structure analysis. Humans domesticated wolves, apex predators, into creatures they called dogs. They did this not for food, but for companionship and assistance. They turned their competitors into their allies. No other species in the hegemony database has done this. The next file made Quillix's skin change to a worried pale blue. Military history. Humans have engaged in continuous warfare for their entire recorded history. They have killed approximately 1 billion of their own species through war, disease, and violence. This has not stopped them. If anything, they've learned from it. He pulled up footage from human entertainment. Cultural analysis reveals extensive exposure to apocalyptic scenarios through fictional media. Alien invasions, robot uprisings, zombie plagues, nuclear war, climate disasters, asteroid impacts. The average human has mentally prepared for their own extinction dozens of times through entertainment consumption. Most concerning, Quillix continued, his voice shaking slightly, is their concept of spite. Humans have a documented pattern of choosing mutually destructive options when they feel wronged. History shows multiple instances of if I can't have it, nobody can thinking. The hegemony has no psychological defense against an enemy willing to lose if it means taking you with them. He saved the file and sent it to Vexthor. Vexthor read it 3 times. Then he called an emergency meeting with his senior staff. We need to break their morale, he announced. Quillix's report shows they're dangerous when unified. So we'll divide them, make them afraid. Show them there's no hope. His propaganda officer, a tall insectoid alien named Trix, nodded eagerly. Sir, I've prepared a planet-wide broadcast. We'll show them visions of their cities burning, their people enslaved, their world conquered. It's designed to trigger maximum despair. Do it, Vexthor ordered. 3 hours later, every screen on Earth, television, computer, phone, displayed the same message. A holographic Vexthor appeared, towering and terrible, speaking in every human language simultaneously. People of Earth, your resistance is futile. Your weapons are toys. Your armies are insects. We have conquered 200 worlds. You will be the 201st. Surrender now, or watch your civilization burn. The hologram showed images of hegemony troops marching through human cities. Humans in chains, Earth's monuments destroyed. It was the most terrifying propaganda the hegemony had ever produced. For about 6 hours it actually worked. People were scared. World leaders held emergency meetings. Some cities began to panic. Then someone edited the video and added the Benny Hill theme music. By the next morning, the broadcast had become a meme. Someone made a version where all the aliens were wearing funny hats. Another edit had them dancing. A third version replaced the scary music with Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley, apparently, making it something called a Rickroll. I survived the alien apocalypse, barely a t-shirt started, selling online before the apocalypse had even begun. Vexthor watched the human internet in horror as his terrifying propaganda became a joke shared billions of times. How? He asked Quillix. How are they doing this? It's a defense mechanism, Quillix explained, showing him psychological reports. When faced with existential threats they cannot control, humans convert fear into humor. It helps them cope. It's also how they show defiance. This is insane. Yes, sir. That's what they said about nuclear weapons, too. Vexthor slumped in his chair, all 4 arms hanging limply. What do we do? Quillix pulled up one more file. Sir, I found something in their database. It's a genre of fictional stories they've been writing for decades. They call it HFY, which stands for humanity. Fuck yeah. I don't understand that phrase. It's crude, but essentially means humanity is amazing. These stories are all about humans encountering aliens and either befriending them or defeating them. They've written thousands of these stories. They've been culturally preparing for first contact for generations. Quillix showed Vexthor story after story. Humans meeting peaceful aliens. Humans meeting hostile aliens. Humans being the tough species. Humans being the crazy species. Humans befriending everyone. Humans fighting everyone. Every possible scenario had been explored in fiction. They've thought about this, Vexthor said slowly. They've imagined meeting us. They've prepared. Not just meeting us, sir. They've prepared for every possible outcome, including scenarios where they lose. And even in those stories, they often find a way to survive or resist. Vexthor stood and paced his office. Outside his window, Earth continued spinning peacefully. On the surface, billions of humans went about their day. apparently unconcerned that an alien fleet was orbiting their planet. "Send a message to High Command," he said finally. "Tell them we need to reassess the Earth situation." "What will you tell them, sir?" Vexthor looked at all the data, all the reports, all the evidence that humanity was unlike anything the hegemony had encountered. "I'm going to tell them the truth," he said. "I'm going to tell them that Earth cannot be conquered through intimidation. These creatures have spent 10,000 years intimidating each other. We're amateurs compared to them. Will High Command listen? Probably not." Vexthor sat down heavily. "But I have to try. Because if we actually go to war with Earth, I don't think we'll win. They have fewer ships, less advanced technology, and no experience with space combat. Then how could they win, sir?" Vexthor pulled up the video of humans laughing at his propaganda. "Because they won't stay down. Because they'll turn our weapons against us. Because they'll make jokes while they die, and that will somehow make them stronger. Because even if we destroy their planet, the survivors will spend the next 1,000 years plotting revenge." He looked at Quillix. "We've conquered 200 worlds because they were afraid of us. Earth isn't afraid. That makes them the most dangerous species we've ever encountered." On Earth, Sarah Chen received a message from Vexthor requesting another meeting. She smiled. "Now we're getting somewhere." The meeting room was different this time. No grand displays, no attempted intimidation. Just Vexthor, Sarah Chen, and a pot of coffee between them. 2 weeks had passed since first contact and everything had changed. "Your High Command rejected your assessment," Sarah said. "It wasn't a question." Vexthor's scales flickered dark purple. "How did you know?" "Because you're still here. If they'd agreed with you, you'd have left by now." Sarah poured coffee for both of them. "They want you to try one more time, don't they?" "They've sent additional forces," Vexthor admitted. 3 more dreadnoughts. "And they've authorized me to use stronger methods. We define stronger. Limited orbital bombardment of military targets. Demonstration attacks on uninhabited areas. Escalating pressure until you surrender." He looked at his coffee. "I don't want to do this." "Then don't. It's not that simple. I have orders. If I refuse, they'll replace me with someone who won't hesitate." Vexthor met her eyes. "Sarah, I've spent 2 weeks studying your species. You're insane. Beautifully, terrifyingly insane. And I don't think my people understand what they're about to start." Sarah leaned back. "You're right. We are a bit crazy. But here's something your High Command doesn't understand. We've been fighting each other for so long that we're really, really good at it. And the one thing that makes us stop fighting each other is when someone from outside threatens us. I've read the history. World War II. The whole planet unified against common threats." "Exactly. Right now, Earth has about 200 nations. We argue constantly. We have disagreements about everything. But you know what we agreed on in about 48 hours after you showed up?" "What?" "That alien invasions are everyone's problem." Sarah pulled out a tablet. "Let me show you something." She displayed a series of documents. Defense agreements, technology sharing protocols, joint military exercises, resource allocations. Every major nation on Earth has agreed to a mutual defense pact. China, Russia, the United States, the European Union, India, Japan, Brazil, everyone. We've started pooling our military resources. We're sharing nuclear technology. We're coordinating defense strategies. She looked at Vexthor. "You did in 2 weeks what we couldn't do in a century. You united us." Vexthor felt cold despite the warm room. "How many nuclear weapons could you produce if you all worked together?" "Do you really want to know?" "No," he said quietly. "I really don't." They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the UN building continued its daily routine, unaware of the conversation that might determine humanity's future. "There's another way," Sarah said finally. "A way where nobody has to die. I'm listening. Your hegemony needs to save face. You can't just leave Earth alone after making all these threats. Your other subjects would start asking questions. You need a win. Yes. And Earth needs to join the galactic community. We need technology, trade routes, access to the larger galaxy. We can't do it alone. Also, yes." Sarah leaned forward. "So here's what we do. Earth officially becomes a protectorate of the hegemony. You get to claim us on all your star maps. You get bragging rights. You look successful. But we govern ourselves completely. No hegemony troops on our soil. No hegemony laws overriding our own. We keep our weapons. We keep our sovereignty. For all practical purposes, we're independent." Vexthor considered this. High Command would never accept such limited control. "They would if we sweetened the deal. Sarah pulled up another document. Earth provides military and cultural advisors to the hegemony. You've got rebellious planets? We'll help negotiate. You've got difficult first contact situations? Send us in. We're really good at being confusing and stubborn. You want to be our problem solvers? Exactly. Think about it. You've spent 2 weeks trying to intimidate us and failed, but we've spent 10,000 years intimidating each other. We know every trick, every psychological tactic, every negotiation strategy. That's valuable. Vexthor's scales slowly shifted to a lighter shade, indicating deep thought. You're offering to help us with other planets in exchange for nominal membership, and technology sharing, and trade agreements, and a non-voting seat at your council. We want to be part of the galactic community, Vexthor. We just don't want to be slaves. This is highly irregular. When has anything about Earth been regular? Vexthor laughed. It was a strange sound, like gravel in a washing machine, but it was genuine. Point taken. But I'll need to sell this to High Command. They want a conquest. Tell them you conquered us diplomatically. Tell them humans are so unpredictable that military action would be too costly. Tell them we agreed to join because we recognize the superiority of the hegemony. Sarah grinned. We'll even have a ceremony where we formally surrender if it makes them feel better. We're good at ceremonies. You'd be willing to perform a fake surrender? As long as everyone knows it's just for show? Sure, we have politicians. We understand symbolic gestures. Vexthor stood and paced the room, all 4 arms moving in a pattern that indicated calculation. He thought about the fleet in orbit. He thought about High Command's orders. He thought about Quelix's reports and the human tendency to never give up. If I present this to High Command, I need guarantees, he said finally. Real ones. Earth cannot become a threat to the hegemony. We have no interest in conquering anyone, Sarah said. We just want to survive and maybe see what's out there in the galaxy. Besides, we're too busy arguing with each other to organize a galactic conquest. For now. But what about in 50 years? 100? Sarah stood as well. By then, I hope we'll be friends. Real friends, not just diplomatic allies. You've spent 2 weeks learning about humans. Now let us show you why we're worth keeping around. How? There's a problem with one of your subject species, isn't there? Quelix mentioned something about rebellious colonies near the outer rim. Vexthor's eyes widened. How do you know about that? We hacked your database on day 3, Sarah said casually. Not all of it. Just enough to understand what we were dealing with. Don't worry, we didn't tell anyone, but we saw the reports. You've got colonies threatening independence. Your usual intimidation tactics aren't working. They're just making the rebels angrier. That's classified information. Was classified. Look, let us help. Send a human diplomatic team. We'll talk to the rebels. We won't threaten them or try to scare them. We'll just talk. If we can resolve the situation peacefully, that proves we're useful. If we can't, you're no worse off than you were before. Vexthor wanted to be angry about the hacking, but he was too tired and too intrigued. You really think you can help? We think we can try. And trying is what we do best. Vexthor walked to the window and looked out at New York City. Millions of humans down there living their lives completely unaware of how close they'd come to war, and somehow, impossibly, they'd turned a potential conquest into a negotiation. I'll present your proposal to High Command, he said, but I can't promise they'll accept. They will, Sarah said confidently, because the alternative is fighting a war they might win, but at a cost that makes winning pointless. And bureaucrats, even alien bureaucrats, hate expensive wars. You're very confident. I'm a UN diplomat. Confidence is required. She extended her hand. Do we have a deal? Pending High Command approval? Vexthor looked at her hand. Such a simple gesture. Such a strange species. Such an impossible situation. He took her hand and shook it. Pending approval, he agreed. But Sarah, yes? If this works, you realize you're setting a precedent. Other species will hear about Earth, they'll want the same deal. Sarah smiled. Good. Maybe then you won't have to go around intimidating everyone. Maybe you can just talk to them instead. Vexthor realized something in that moment. Earth hadn't just refused to be conquered. They were trying to change the entire hegemony from within. And the truly terrifying part? It might actually work. 6 months had passed since the treaty signing. The ceremony had been everything Sarah promised. Elaborate, symbolic, and completely for show. Earth officially became a hegemony protectorate. Vexthor got his victory. High Command was satisfied. And nothing actually changed except now humans had access to the galaxy. Vexthor stood in a conference room on a space station orbiting a planet called Krelax 7. Across from him sat representatives of the Krelax Resistance, a group that had been fighting hegemony control for 3 years. Between them sat Sarah Chen and 2 other human diplomats. "Let me get this straight," said Krelax Commander Zefnar, his green scales bristling with anger. "The hegemony sends humans to negotiate with us? Humans who supposedly surrendered 6 months ago?" "We prefer the term reached a mutually beneficial arrangement," Sarah corrected cheerfully. "And yes, we're here to help resolve this situation. I don't want your help. I want independence." "Totally understandable," said Marcus Williams, one of the other human diplomats. "We've been there. America fought a war for independence in 1776. Worked out pretty well for us." Zefnar blinked. "You fought for independence? Against who?" "The British Empire. They were the superpower at the time. Controlled a quarter of the world. We won," Marcus shrugged. "Took a while, but we managed." The Krelax rebels looked at each other, confused. "But you surrendered to the hegemony," another rebel pointed out. "We negotiated a deal," Sarah corrected. "Big difference. Now we govern ourselves, we keep our weapons, and we get access to galactic technology and trade. Plus we get to help people like you." "Help us how? By convincing us to surrender?" "By showing you there are options between total submission and endless war." The third human diplomat, Yuki Tanaka, pulled up a holographic display. "Let's talk about what you actually want versus what you say you want." "We want independence," Zefnar insisted. "Right, but what does that mean specifically?" Yuki asked. "Freedom to govern yourselves? Freedom to trade with whoever you want? Freedom from hegemony military presence? Freedom from hegemony taxes? All of the above?" Zefnar paused. "All of those things." "Okay, good. Now let's talk about what the hegemony wants." Yuki turned to Vexthor. "Ambassador?" Vexthor, who had been silent until now, leaned forward. "The hegemony needs to maintain the appearance of control. We need assurance that Krelax won't become a base for pirates or hostile forces, and we need at least nominal acknowledgement of hegemony authority." "Right," Yuki said. "So the hegemony doesn't actually need to control your daily life. They just need you to not be a security threat and to technically be part of their empire." "That's oversimplifying," Vexthor protested. "Is it though?" Marcus asked. "Come on, Vexthor. We've seen your administrative reports. You spend way too many resources occupying rebellious planets. It's inefficient. You know it. High Command knows it. They just don't want to admit it." Zefnar looked between the humans and Vexthor. "Are you seriously negotiating with each other right in front of us?" "It's more efficient this way," Sarah explained. "No secret backroom deals. Everything's transparent. Now here's what we propose. Krelax becomes a self-governing protectorate, similar to Earth. You handle your own laws, your own economy, your own military. The hegemony keeps their name on the star charts and maintains a small diplomatic presence, maybe a trade station in orbit. You're technically part of the empire, but practically independent. That's exactly what we want," one of the younger rebels exclaimed. "Which is exactly why it will work," Yuki said. "Both sides get what they actually need, even if it's not what they think they want." The negotiations continued for 6 more hours. The humans mediated, suggested compromises, and occasionally told stories about Earth's various wars and peace treaties. They compared the situation to the European Union, to the United Nations, to the American Civil War reconstruction. "You humans have a lot of experience with conflict resolution," Zefnar observed during a break. "We have a lot of experience with conflict," Sarah corrected. "The resolution part is relatively new, but we're getting better at it." By the end of the day, both sides had agreed to a framework. Krelax would become autonomous but remain nominally part of the hegemony. Hegemony forces would withdraw except for a small diplomatic presence. Trade would be open. Both sides would agree to mutual defense if attacked by outside forces. When the papers were signed, Zefnar looked at Sarah. "I don't understand you humans. You helped the hegemony, but you also helped us. Whose side are you on?" "Everyone's side," Sarah said. "We don't want people fighting when they could be talking. Fighting is expensive, people die, and nothing really gets solved. Talking is cheaper and nobody has to die." "But you're warriors. I've seen your history. You've fought more wars than any species in the database." "Exactly," Marcus said. which is why we know war is stupid. We've tried it. We've done it to each other for thousands of years. And you know what we learned? Peace is better. Peace is cheaper. Peace lets you focus on actually improving your life instead of just surviving. After the Krelax delegates left, Vexthor sat alone with the three humans. That was remarkable, he admitted. 3 years of conflict resolved in one day. It helps that both sides were tired of fighting, Yuki said. They just needed permission to stop and a way to do it without losing face. High Command will be pleased. This makes the hegemony look strong and merciful. And it gives the Krelax what they wanted, Sarah added. Everyone wins. That's how good negotiations work. Vexthor looked at the three humans. In 6 months, they'd resolved 4 separate conflicts within hegemony space. They'd opened trade negotiations with 2 neighboring federations. They'd even started cultural exchange programs that were surprisingly popular. You're changing the hegemony, he said. From the inside. We're helping the hegemony change itself, Sarah corrected. You don't need to conquer people to be powerful. You just need to be someone people want to work with. That's not how empires work. It's not how your empire worked, Marcus said. But empires change or they fall. Ask the Romans. Ask the British. Ask the Soviets. Empires that can't adapt don't survive. Vexthor thought about this as they packed up to leave. 6 months ago, he'd come to Earth expecting easy conquest. Instead, he'd found a species that refused to be intimidated and somehow convinced him that conquest was inefficient. Sarah, he said as they prepared to board the shuttle, when you first refused to surrender, did you know it would lead to this? No, she admitted. We were just buying time and hoping we wouldn't have to fight. But then we realized something. You didn't want to fight either. You wanted submission. When we wouldn't submit, you had to actually talk to us. And once we were talking, we could work things out. You gambled everything on that assumption. Welcome to being human. We gamble a lot, she smiled. But we're really good at reading the room. And we read you correctly, Vexthor. You're not a conqueror. You're an administrator who got stuck doing a conqueror's job. Vexthor couldn't argue with that. 3 months later, Vexthor met Sarah at a bar on a neutral space station. They'd started meeting regularly to discuss ongoing diplomatic missions. It had become something close to friendship. High Command has received 15 requests from other protectorates asking for human diplomatic teams, Vexthor said, sipping a drink that tasted like vanilla and regret. Are they going to approve them? They already did. Apparently we're running out of soldiers and the accountants discovered diplomacy is 90% cheaper than occupation. Sarah laughed. Told you. Accountants run everything, even space empires. You realize what you've done, don't you? Vexthor looked at her seriously. In less than a year, you've changed 4,000 years of hegemony policy. We just offered a different perspective. No, you changed everything. He gestured at the space station around them, at the dozens of different species walking past. There are species here who were enemies for centuries. They're trading now, talking, learning, because they saw what happened with Earth and Krelax and they wanted the same thing. Is that bad? I don't know yet. Ask me in a decade, Vexthor paused. My superiors want me to project what the hegemony will look like in 50 years if this trend continues. And I told them that in 50 years we'll still be the hegemony. We'll still have our territory and our influence. But instead of controlling through fear, we'll control through cooperation. Instead of conquest, we'll have partnerships. We'll be less like an empire and more like... He struggled to find the word. A federation? Sarah suggested. An alliance? A community? Yes, all of those things. He looked at his drink. I also told them that in 50 years, every species in the hegemony will probably be wearing blue jeans and eating pizza. Sarah burst out laughing. Really? Cultural exchange goes both ways. Earth exports more than just diplomacy. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the galaxy go about its business outside the station windows. Vexthor, Sarah said eventually. That first day when you tried to intimidate us and it didn't work. What were you thinking? That I'd made a terrible mistake, he admitted. That humans were going to destroy everything. And now? He looked at her and smiled. A gesture he'd learned from humans that his own species had never developed. Now I think humans are going to destroy everything anyway, he said. But you'll rebuild it better. Above Earth, visible from the station, a new sign had been installed on the moon. It was bright enough to see from orbit, written in multiple languages including Hegemony Standard. Earth open for business. Below it someone had spray-painted in smaller letters, "We told you we could talk this out." Sarah and Vexthor raised their glasses. "To talking things out," Sarah said. "To aggressive friendship," Vexthor replied. They clinked glasses and drank. Two representatives of different worlds who'd somehow become friends when they were supposed to be enemies. Somewhere in Hegemony space, 15 diplomatic teams were being assembled. All of them included humans. All of them were about to change everything. And Vexthor still wasn't sure if that was terrifying or wonderful. Probably both.